Hey, so today I gave this training at PayPal. It was an internal training about PayPal scripts, this thing that I've been working on at PayPal. But I'm just I recorded it so that people could watch it later, like you. And I'm putting it out in the public because there's nothing about this that's like proprietary or anything. This is like all built on top of open source stuff anyway. But the reason that I'm putting this out there is because I'm hoping that this can inspire some other people to build similar tools like this for the open source community or for their company. And yeah, so I hope you enjoy it and it's insightful to you. I'm sorry if you don't work at PayPal, like you can't actually use any of these tools, but maybe eventually we'll be able to open source it. But like I say in this video, it's not really a priority right now. Right now we're just trying to get things to ship. So anyway, I hope it's helpful and insightful. Enjoy. Okay, I think that we should start. And the folks who come in late, well, hopefully people come in late. Otherwise, this is...
It'll be an even better group because they'll be closer and they'll be able to ask
Exactly. Yeah. I want to make sure we cover as many use cases as possible, questions and things. Because this is a really interactive training, and so yeah, if you have questions or whatever during the training, then please chime in, because yeah, I think that's going to be what makes this valuable. So PayPal scripts, how many people have looked at the documentation for PayPal scripts already? Okay, handful of you, great, most of you. How many people have read every word? Okay. That's all right. I have. Just kidding. I wrote every word except for this one. Thank you, Bruno. So yeah, we're just pretty much. I'm just gonna go through the documentation. I'm not gonna like read the documentation. I'm just gonna kind of go through the each piece of the documentation and set up an actual module, an app, and just show you what it is like. And you can give me feedback and ask questions. I am going to be keeping track of your feedback, so what are some things we really like, what are some things we don't want improved, so that we can make the tool better. Because it's still work in progress. I definitely wouldn't call it officially released yet. It is usable for modules. It is not quite there for apps. It's really, really close. But yeah, not quite there. So yeah, definitely a work in progress. There are many things that could be improved, and so we're going to hopefully do those. Yeah, good question. That should be where I start. No, I wasn't. So thank you. Yeah, so PayPal scripts was created because there's a lot of duplication in what people are doing here at PayPal with regard to tooling. Every single team is going to set up an ESLint config, and if they're not, then that's missing tooling, which is almost worse than outdated tooling or duplicate tooling. And every team is going to need a Webpack config. Hi, Brian. Thanks for coming. And every team's going to need like a whole bunch of stuff. And what ends up happening is because you're not tooling engineers, we're product engineers. We're trying to ship something. And so we make the tools work just barely enough so that we can start shipping things. And then we move on to building what we're shipping. And what that leaves us with is tools that are under-optimized, tools that are totally missing from the stack, like a type checker like FlowType or something. And then over time, those tools fall out of date, and there's missed opportunities there. And on top of that, all of the time that we do spend configuring these tools is an opportunity cost for how we could have shipped something sooner if we didn't have to configure our Webpack over and over again and keep that up to date. So PayPal scripts is the answer to that problem. It allows you to really quickly start an app and keep that updated because it encapsulates all of the tools that are cover common use cases in PayPal apps and modules into a single cohesive tool. And yeah, you just install this tool, you start using the scripts, and you start building your product. So it has some opinions that it ships with, and for the most part, everybody should be happy with those opinions. But because PayPal has to support a wide variety of use cases, there is the ability to extend the capabilities of the underlying tools or completely override them. And also because PayPal scripts is just a bunch of scripts, you can, if you don't like the way that PayPal scripts does the testing, then you can have your own testing script and then use PayPal for the build or for these other things. And so it's very much a Lego block that you can manipulate and configure it in however you like. But for like 80% of people, they should be able to just use PayPal scripts as it is and ship their stuff. So yeah, that's what PayPal scripts is. That's why it exists. Does anybody have any questions before we start playing with it, doing stuff with PayPal scripts? Okay, cool. So
does it cost?
It's free. Yay! Yeah, so long as you're internal. It's not open source. Maybe one day, but right now it depends on things that are published to the internal registry. So you wouldn't want to use this on something that is open source because you won't be able to have anybody contribute to your project because they won't be able to install it, which is unfortunate. So if you want that, you can look at KTD scripts, which is like my version of PayPal scripts that is open source, and it does a lot of really interesting, fun things too. It takes forever to load, but there you go. Okay, cool. So I've got this little project called PPMath, which is an unfortunate name, but that's what it is. And we're just going to, so actually, I should say that PayPal scripts supports 3 main use cases. It supports applications, mostly, and then browser modules and node modules. So modules that are intended to be like used in your front-end application, and then modules that are for like back-end tooling or other like your node server. But despite that, it actually is very similar in the way that it behaves and the way that things work between modules and apps. They're like most of the scripts work the same between them all. And so we're going to start by building a node module. I'm going to switch that to a browser module so you see the difference. And then we'll build out an app. And I'll demo that. And you should see just minor differences between all 3 of these. Lots of this is going to be exactly the same. So with PPMath, this is going to be, we'll start with this as a node module. And the first thing that you're going to do in a new project is you're going to initialize your package.json. Because, yeah, that's, everybody needs a package.json. That says answer yes to all the questions you're about to ask me. So that way I don't have to fill out all that stuff. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install as a dev dependency PayPal scripts. Add up a little bit. Thank you. There we go. And that is going to take, oh, whoops, am I not on the VPN? What? Just. Oh, yes. Thank you. So, so my your global registry, like globally on your computer, might be pointing to the PayPal registry. Mine's not because I do a lot of open source. And so what I recommend is that you put an npm-rc file in your project, so there's no ambiguity, and you just set the and you can follow. By the way, you can follow along if you want to, but I'm not going to be slow, and so you'll probably fall behind.
I think a lot of people.
So yeah, you're totally welcome to follow along too if you want. So this is registry equals, and it's http://npm.paypal.com. I think that's right. Hopefully it is, because I'm going to try. Try that again. Okay, so this is going to take a really long time. Let me show you why. If we go to the package.json of the PayPal scripts repo, we're going to see that it has a ton of dependencies, like a lot. And that's just what happens when you encapsulate a lot of tools into one tool. So it's going to have a lot of dependencies. The nice thing is that if PayPal scripts didn't exist, you would have all these dependencies in your own project, package.json. So you're not downloading any more than you would already. It's all just living inside of one tool. But that means that this is going to take quite some time. So while that is running, I'm going to check my notes really quick. Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at the modules guide. So PayPal scripts determines how to run some of its scripts based off of the directory structure of your project. So it knows that because this has, like, this is your directory for your project, here's your package.json, and it has a source directory. So it says, oh, okay, I know this is a module. I don't know whether it's a browser module or a node module, but that doesn't make a difference in this case. And in most cases, it doesn't make a difference. I just know that this is a module, so I'm going to behave in this way. So one thing that I think is really important, and we could probably do a better job of here, is at PayPal, is documenting our modules that we're inner sourcing together. So I have this really handy beginning of a README for you. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, put that here. And it looks really nice too. Just move this over. We're going to call this, whoops, and update everywhere, pp math. And here we can even get a markdown preview. So it has, like, I think it looks kind of nice. But in any case, it's a good idea to have a really good solid README with a good usage instructions, and we can talk about the doc scripts later. But if your module that you're building or your app requires documentation that's longer than a couple hundred lines of markdown, then it might be a good idea to have, like, a documentation site. And that is exactly what this is. So PayPal scripts uses itself to generate the documentation site. And we can talk more about the docs later. But for lots of our modules that we're building internally, just the README is fine. But in any case, you're building a module, even building an app, you should document stuff. You could also use the wiki feature in GitHub. But I just really want to drill in. We want better documentation for our modules at PayPal because it is, for some modules, I've had a really hard time using them because they're not well documented. Okay. Yeah, unless you were to build, like, your own version of PayPal scripts on top of PayPal scripts or something, yeah, there's really no instance where you will want PayPal scripts installed in production in any environment. So
you might say, okay, that's fine, but there's actually benefits. You go to publish, deploy your app to Altus, it'll look at the, oh, these are dev, it won't bother. So normally in our apps, we get so confused with what's actually the dev. So, like, the grunt, the babble, all that stuff. Sometimes it's in the devs. Limiting the amount of stuff to get documented.
mm-hmm.
It's nice to try and so maybe also about that.
Yeah, we could maybe do something about that.
But when you see how this works, I think you'll find that you should eliminate it, especially with totally yeah, so avoid.
So I'm going to put that in our ideas, so feel free if you have an idea for the idea jar or this Sublime text document, feel free to chime in. Good idea. Okay, great. Hey, it finished. That was actually faster than I expected. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to point out a couple of logs that we see here really quick. So one thing that's happening when you install PayPal scripts, hello, is it runs PayPal scripts depends on a package called Husky. How many people know what Husky is? Okay. Husky is great. It allows you to have installable shared Git hooks. And a Git hook is a script that you can have run during a certain phase of Git workflow. So in particular, before you commit some code. And so Husky works in such a way that it installs these Git hooks when somebody installs Husky, and then you can configure what scripts to run in your package.json. And so if you want a pre-commit hook, then you'll make a script called pre-commit, and then whatever you set as that script in your package.json, Husky will run that. And so PayPal scripts takes advantage of that and has a pre-commit script that it will run, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's it looks like Husky actually failed to install because I've totally forgot to initialize this as a Git repository. So when we get to that step, I'll initialize it. We'll see what that's like. Yeah. Well, that's a good idea. I should make sure that's noted. Note git initialize git repo for installation. Another thing to note is if you already have your own Git hooks, then Husky will not override yours, and so you can wind up with stale commit hooks that your coworkers aren't using. Some people have run into that too. But then another thing that it does, PayPal scripts will run this install script, which all that does is it says, if I'm in an app, I'm going to also install the server and client dependencies for you. So all you have to do is run install in the root directory, and it will take care of installing in the other directories. Because we're in a module here, it doesn't do anything, but that is a useful feature. I don't know what this Uglify thing is doing. That's a Webpack something or other. And NodeMon is like, hey, give us money because we're open source and we want money. And I can't blame them. I want money too. Yeah, that's all that's happening when you install. And let me just make sure that I'm on the right page. Okay. Cool. Does anybody have any questions before we start using some of the scripts? Okay, great. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna echo node modules into my git ignore, because who wants to commit your node modules into git? And I'm actually gonna git init as well. And then I'm going to make a directory called source, and then I'm going to make a file called sourceindex.js. Okay, great. And this is all that it takes to be a module. You have your package.json with your stuff in it, with your PayPal scripts dev dependency, and then you have a source directory with index.js. And this is the entry of your module. To make that actually, here, we'll talk about the main here a little bit. We'll do that after we do the build. So let's go ahead and make a math module. Because PayPal scripts already includes all the Babel nice things, you can actually use ES modules and all of the other things that you want to in here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll make a function called sum, and this is going to take A and B, and it's going to return A and B, A plus B. And then we'll do export sum as a named export. And so now people can import star as math and math.sum, and it'll be great. So let's go ahead and build this, because this export isn't going to work in real node projects. So we'll get rid of this test script for now, and I'll add a build script. And because I have PayPal scripts installed, it's going to stick in my node modules a .bin directory, and in here it's going to have a lot of binaries. One of those starts with P. It's PayPal scripts. Great. So actually, before I do anything else, I'm going to run that binary. So I'll go node modules.bin/PayPal scripts. Give myself a little more room here. And this is going to give us a useful little thing here, the scripts that you can run. And the documentation is all online, so there's not much useful here, unless you want to get some help. So you specify the script that you want to learn about, and you can add --help, and that will throw an error, of course. What? Oh, because I left a dangling package comma. Okay, there we go. So yeah, it'll give you a little bit of an explanation of what's going on, some customization and defaults. There's quite a bit of duplication of information between here and the docs online. Yeah, this should give you kind of an idea of what are some of the things that you can do to customize stuff. So we'll just leave that as it is. One other really handy thing that you can do is add a --pp-dry-run. Sorry, I didn't check close enough. Carlos, can you see that text? Yeah. It's like kind of all the way down. Here, I'll keep doing that. Is that better? Okay. So if you use this flag on any of the scripts, then it's not actually going to run your script. It's going to output what would be run if you were to run this without that flag. So if I run this, then we're going to see this is the script that would have run. It's going to use Babel on our source. And so if you are familiar with the tool, then maybe you can use this to debug why the tool is not behaving in the way that you would expect. And also it's going to show you like, it's going to use spawn.sync under the hood. And so if you're familiar with that API, these are the things that are going to happen there. So these are just a couple of things you can do to debug stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and just run the script as it is because things are exactly what I want. And this is the output from that Babel script. So its source index goes to dist index. So if we go over here, so now we have this new dist directory, and that's going to have the generated code, that Babel transpiled for us. Woohoo! Yeah, and we didn't have to configure anything, right? That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll add my so I don't know, it's like probably 2 years. Putting a lot of stuff in shareable. It's like fine, our setup like okay. Babel because I wanted to be a sim. But at the time I was like really there's so much work getting set up and the repo I had like a slightly that loose this thing out of the box.
Yay.
Yeah, I can speak. Just one. Using the existing as like config it, to try to replicate. We had no reason. We had no idea why. To the real problem.
Wow, that's a challenge no matter what you're doing.
But like we've got all these Babel things. We have no idea.
Mm. Yeah, it's tricky, and on top of that, like, and this is what I would do if I were in your situation. Is as soon as I got it working, I would stop worrying about it, and there are probably things left over in that config that don't need to be there, but I still need to maintain that because maybe that matters. And so yeah, like it's just really easy to just say, okay, finally got it working. Now I can get back to real work. So great. Okay, so a couple other things that we want to do here. So this is going to be our main entry. When people are using our module, they're going to be using this. And so we need to go to our package.json and update the main so that when people go to require ppmath, they're going to be requiring our dist index.js file instead. Great. And I'm going to go ahead and update this script now that we know that this is what we want. We're going to say PayPal scripts build. And we don't have to do the full like node modules thing that we were doing before because scripts inside of npm scripts have access to anything that's in the .bin directory. So just that will do. And then one other thing that is kind of important with the build script is engines. So with browser modules, it doesn't matter quite as much because PayPal scripts is already configured to transpile things down to the browsers that PayPal supports, i.e. 10 and Safari something, like iOS something. I can't remember exactly, but you can look at it later if you want. But with Node, most of us are moving up to Node 8, and so we don't need to transpile nearly as much. We pretty much only need to transpile like object spread and modules. That's like pretty much it that we ever actually use. And what? And flow. Yeah, and flow. We'll talk about flow later too. So that's where Engines comes in for both the server side of our of apps and the Node modules. Is you specify a Node version range of what your module supports, and Babel will transpile it to support that that version of Node. Huh? Babel doesn't use the engines, but PayPal scripts makes Babel use what you specify in the engines. So if you said, no, we can't do browser, but that's a really good idea. So support browser list like React scripts. Actually, React scripts version 2 has a browser list thing that it does. So I'm just paste. Yeah, it's great. But here, so I only really care to support version 8, but you could do like, you could say like anything greater than and equal to 4. And it's going to take the smallest version and transpile things down to that. So we'll just say version 8, just because, yeah. And it'll transpile less. It'll, like, you'll be able to use async await stuff. It's so awesome. And have really good stack traces because it's not being transpiled. So good. Great. Let me, oh yeah, there's one other thing. So if PayPal scripts is doing things like with the config that you're kind of confused about, then you can use this handy debug thing. So if I can run npm run build, so that's going to run our build again. So and actually if I add -s, that'll silence the npm output. So I'm just seeing the output from the script, which is kind of nice. So you can add this debug equals PayPal scripts : *, and this is going to give you some helpful debug output. And so here it's PayPal scripts config Babel, and this is what the Babel config looks like for your project. And it looks like that's doing object, so that's not very useful. Yeah, fix debug, fix debug for deep objects. Okay. But yeah, so this applies to any of the scripts. So you add this debug equals PayPal scripts : *, or if we only, like, some of the scripts are going to be using multiple tools all at once, and if you only care about the config for a specific tool, then you could say config : Babel, and that will just show you the logs for the Babel config, but there's like config ESLint and a whole bunch of others. And in the documentation, that's listed for each one of these, well, except for the one that I clicked on. Right here, it'll tell you what the debug flag would be for that. But everything's prefixed with PayPal scripts, so you can do : but anyway, that should hopefully be pretty helpful, useful to you. Like, oh, why is transform class properties being included, or is it being included? Well, you can determine that. Pretty handy. Okay, cool. Let me just make sure. Oh yeah, and then we can talk about building this as a library for the browser as well. Any questions before I move on to that? Yeah, that'll be later. I'm almost done with the build script. And we've covered a lot of stuff that's like generally about scripts. The other scripts will. Okay, so one other thing with the build script is that it also supports browsers, building like browser modules. And in this case, like, this is totally something that could run in the browser and on the server. And so if you have a universal module, then you'll treat it as a browser module, and it should still run on the server. Considering that like your module runs on the server and the browser. But all you need to do to accomplish that is you add a flag called bundle lib, and then we can run this. I'm going to just run it this way. And now it's going to use actually a, oh, did I save that? Let's try that. Oh yeah, bundle, thank you. It's like, that is not the rollup output. Okay, so the output's gonna look a little bit different now. It's gonna throw an error because silly reasons, sorry, default. We're gonna change that to an object export. There we go. Okay, so the output's different. You're gonna see these colorful things that have these module formats in them. And if you look in the dist directory now, it looks completely different. So instead of having a single index.js file in here, you're going to have the module name, the format name, .js. And so we support the common JS format and ES modules for tree shakeability in Webpack and Rollup and these other tools. So if you, if your consumers are using these tools, then they can import this and get nice tree shaking support. And then even UMD, so if you want to like have a demo that's like right in the browser, doesn't require any translation or anything like that, then you can use the UMD and even a minified UMD, which, to be perfectly honest, these ones are only really included because it was really easy to include them. Yeah, really the only ones that people are actually going to use like in a real application will be the ESM and CJS. So to get modules to use these formats, or like users of your modules to use these formats properly, then you need to change your package.json because again, now it's not index anymore, but it's the name of your module. So pp-math.cjs.js. So that'll be the main. If somebody requires this from Node, they're going to be getting the common JS module format of your library. But if you are using, sorry, one second. There it is. Oh, I don't have it in here. Sorry, I forgot what the format is. Sample browser module. If you're using Webpack, or if somebody's like consuming your library and they're using Webpack, then you want them to be able to consume the ES modules version so they can get the nice tree shaking features. And to get that, oh goodness, I don't have it in here either. Okay. No, it's really important. Let me just figure this out. Package JSON module field. I think it's just module. Yeah, it's just module. Okay. So if so you'll also want to add module here, and for tools that can consume ES modules, then they'll be directed to pp-math.esm.js. And so those tools can that can read the module field will consume the ES modules they'll get. Any questions about that? Those are pretty much the only differences between building for the browser and building for Node. Is you add this bundle lib, and then you update your main and your module to point to the CJS format. Yeah. So yeah, that's actually a good question. Let me make yeah, you do. So let me show you. I'm glad that you asked this question because this is a more useful distinction. So if we wanted to break out or add a subtract method and we didn't want it in our index for some reason, then we can add it here. We'll say function subtract a and b. We'll return a minus b, and then we'll export default subtract. Okay. And then in here, we're going to import subtract from subtract. And then we'll add that to our exports. Okay. So now if I run this again, here, actually, let me show you the problem first. So if I remove bundle lib and I just run the build again, then this is just going to run with Babel. And the dist is going to have both index and subtract. And that works perfect with Node because you can require that module and everything works naturally. But that doesn't work in the browser because I would have to add a script tag for each one of these items. With Webpack, it would work, but not like what you'd have to do to support tree shaking is you'd have to have some sort of like a different entry for ESM and CJS. So you'd have like an index.esm.js and then a subtract.esm.js. And then you'd have to have an index.cjs.js and an index. Or a subtract.cjs.js. That was probably super confusing. So if you really are seriously interested in understanding why this is a potential problem, come talk to me later. But just know and trust me, if you want to build for both or for the browser at all, then you need to use BundleLib. So, but yeah, definitely feel free to come chat with me about it later, and I can explain it in more detail. But here I'll do BundleLib again, and we'll run the build. And now our dist just has this file. And the cool thing about Rollup is that it actually puts those files all together. It's not just concatenating the files. It actually hoists them all to the root level of the module, and makes it almost looks like this is how I would write the code if I were to write it all in one file, which I think is pretty rad. So yeah, go Rollup. Okay, so that's the build script. I don't think that I had anything else about that. Let me just double check. Yeah, that was it. I'm going to move on to linting next, unless anybody has it. Sorry, could you say that again? Mm-hmm. So no, is there, not right now. So yeah, sorry, when I say no to any of your questions about the capabilities of PayPal scripts, it's first and foremost, it's because it doesn't exist yet. It's not possible yet. It's not that it couldn't ever work that way. But my next question would be, why would you want to configure the directory structure? Uh-huh. Is there a reason? Is there a reason why you'd want that? If you what? Uh-huh. Is there a reason though?
Yeah. There are historical.
Mm-hmm.
Change.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, in some cases, for US client,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a,
Right.
I want to run link client and the
Mm-hmm.
server.
So with PayPal scripts, I may be misunderstanding your question, but PayPal scripts can differentiate between client or between applications and modules. And so if it sees that you have a client and a server directory, then it's going to run linting across both of those directories. If you don't, then it'll just run it normal. So yeah, good question. And your questions bring up a point that I wanted to make. Part of the purpose of PayPal scripts is to make and have opinions about things. So and make decisions that are unimportant. And so so that you can focus on like your brain power on making decisions that actually are important. So whether we call this dist or build or whatever, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like it's going to function exactly the same. So the part of the value that you get out of using PayPal scripts is that you don't have to make that decision. Yeah. For bundling, yeah. So for applications, we use Webpack. Rollup is just a lot better at this. Yeah. Yeah. If you want to override, it's yeah. So actually, I should I'll talk about that before I get into linting. So if you don't like the Babel configuration, for example, or the rollup, we could do the rollup. Rollup will be more confusing. We'll do Babel. If you don't like the Babel configuration, then what you do is you add a Babel RC file. And from this, you can just configure Babel just like you would normally. So here we'll say, I don't even know what I would use. We can, normally when you're configuring Babel yourself, you want to install all of the plugins and have those listed in your package.json and everything. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to waste trees, internet. So we're going to say presets, and I'm just going to have env, and I'm just going to leave that. And I can go ahead and run the build again. And if I looks like something blew up. Yeah, it's all you had to do. And also, oh, yeah, please do. But wait, there's more. So actually, the reason this is breaking is because Rollup is expecting the raw ES modules, and our Babel configuration is transpiling ES modules. So we're just going to switch this. We'd have to do a little bit of extra work to make that work, and I don't want to make you wait. So we're going to switch this to a node build. So for applications, you have to change your directory structure to match PayPal script's expected structure. And so the answer to your question lies in how easy it is to do that.
I'll give you an answer. I created, so yeah, really powerful. It doesn't think about two. But realistically, it depends. Definitely this is kind of a question we're talking about. We're talking about this for everyone. That's something. First, we'll look at does it work for us. I think that'll make.
Yeah, we want to ship at least one app with it before we recommend other people use it for everything. Yeah. So yeah, I should have made that clear from the very start. We actually have not shipped anything with this yet. So like I said, it's not 1.0 yet. So anyway, that's if we look in our dist now, we won't really see any difference. I'm trying to think if there's not really a whole lot different I can show you. Well, here actually. Because the default for the env preset is to transpile down to everything that's included in ES 2015 or ES6, then I could use an ES6 feature add a default of 0 to this. And now if I run the build again, and then look here, then I'm going to get this transpiled stuff, which is, that's fun. At least it runs in environments that don't support that. But if I were to remove this configuration, now PayPal scripts is going to use the built-in configuration, which is smart because it looks for your engine's configuration here. And it will only transpile down to node 8. So here, now we pop this open, and it's still transpiled. Oh, whoops, I had that open before. There we go. And it's using that feature. So yes, you can use the built-in configuration. Yes, you can extend it, or yes, you can override it. But you can also extend it. So and each tool will be extensible in a different way. So here we can say Babel RC, and then you can say preset. Presets is an array that includes node modules / PayPal scripts. Actually, you don't need the node module. PayPal scripts / Babel. And now this is effectively exactly the same as the built-in configuration. If I run the build again, it's going to use my built-in configuration, but it's because mine is extending the built-in, then it's going to just behave exactly. So what's nice about that is if you wanted to add a plugin, then you extend the built-in, or you say your presets are the built-in configuration, and in addition, these other plugins. So there's absolutely no lock-in with PayPal scripts. Every single tool is totally configurable, and like extendable and totally overridable. And if you really just don't like the way the script is working, you just don't use that script and configure all those tools yourself. Any questions about that? Okay, cool. So I'll just really quickly, I'm not going to actually run anything, but if you wanted to extend the rollup config, then you just make a rollup config.js. So you configure the tool as it's normally expected to be configured. And then for rollup and for anything that's like in a JS file, you can actually require PayPal scripts / rollup. And this is going to be the rollup config. Here, and I'll just module exports the rollup config. And then let me get rid of this babelrc thing. We'll add bundle lib. So now it's going to actually use the rollup config. Okay, and then here I'm going to throw a new blah. And we'll run the build, and we'll see it's going to throw that error because blah. So it is actually using, or it's requiring in this rollup config because I have it configured. So if you really want to configure things, you learn how to configure that tool, you start configuring it, and PayPal scripts will pick it up. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. The nice thing about this is you get object.assign on the rollup config, and then like your overrides. Like that. So. Okay, cool. Great, let's go ahead and start linting this project because I don't trust myself enough to not ship something wrong, so I need all the help I can get. So we're going to add a lint script. We'll say PayPal scripts lint, and I'm going to run npm run lint, and I get nothing. So no linting errors, that's great. Let's go ahead and we'll add some linting error. We'll add C right here. And we'll not use it, and that's a linting problem. So we'll get our linting. So like super boring, right? Like you all know what this is like. So yeah, honestly, there's not a whole lot to say about the linting stuff. You'll notice that my editor isn't giving me any feedback about linting, and your editors probably do that. The problem with using a tool like PayPal scripts that abstracts all the configuration away is that it means your editors can't find the configuration either. And that is a challenge which we can address by configuring those tools. So just like we created a babelrc, we could also make an ESLintRC or whatever the ESLint configuration that's normal. I like to do it right inside the package.json because it's really small. Because all I'm going to do is I'll say ESLint config. I'll add extends using the normal extending mechanism from ESLint. And with this one, I have to give a full path to the module. So no modules / PayPal scripts / ESLint.js. And now I have to reload my editor, so it picks that up. And magic, there we go. And so now it's able to, like, what actually happens is the editor says, oh, cool, look, ESLint configuration. Let me go and resolve that. And ESLint says, oh, you're extending this one. And then from there on, it's all just built-in config. So this is just using the normal mechanism. So from now on, PayPal scripts is actually going to use my configuration, which in turn is actually using the built-in configuration. So nothing changes here. But this is just like a little hack to make the editors. So. Okay, cool. One other thing about linting. There is currently a bug open with ESLint that I opened. I actually have a pull request for it. But they decided in my pull request that they also wanted to change like 7 million other things about ESLint to make my pull request be accepted, which I cannot do. And so for who knows how long this bug will be open. But in any case, we cannot have a built-in ESLint ignore. And so if you want to have directories that are ignored, like for example, the dist directory, which right now doesn't exist, but Yeah, actually, if we run the build, and then we run the linting script again, then we're going to get a bunch of errors in our dist directory, which is like super sad. And so we have to explicitly configure the ignore. Just like I said, really unfortunate, but it's pretty simple. ESLint ignore, and in fact, I have it like in here, so I'll just copy this. Pretty good standard for stuff. And once we get into testing, there will be a coverage directory you want. And so with that, now ESLint will pick up that ESLint ignore. Have that one. Okay, cool. Is this exciting and fun? Okay. You're all kind of tired looking. Yes. But I'll take your word for it.
So what actually can do to this increment? So I'm changing.
Mm-hmm. 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 That's right. Yeah, you can just use bits and pieces of PayPal scripts that you want. Yeah, and actually that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but like you don't have to use the build script to benefit from the Babel configuration, the built-in, which is pretty cool. So yeah, less to configure. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Yeah, you could totally. So this configuration, all yours. You don't even have to use the built-in. So now I have no configuration. And actually, if I save this and run this, I'm not going to have, well, oh yeah, well, now we're getting errors because we're not setting the module type. But in any case, yeah, you don't have to use the built-in configuration at all. That's the whole point. And I think that's an important piece to get across is lots of you probably care too much about your code formatting and your linting and stuff. And so you're going to want to customize things. It's really easy to do that. But if you're doing that, ask yourself, do I care too much about this stuff? Should I maybe be shipping my stuff instead? Because it really doesn't matter as much. That's the whole point of PayPal scripts is to make the easy decisions, the dumb decisions for you, so you can focus on the hard decisions and success. Great. Cool. Other questions? Okay. Let me make sure there was nothing else about linting I wanted to talk about. I don't think so. Oops. Yeah, I don't think so. So linting is great, but it's not as great as, well, it's hard to compare. But another thing that's great is flow type. Hello. So how many people have used flow type before? Okay, handful of you. This is going to make your applications crash less. So listen up. So PayPal scripts includes flow, and the way that you use it is flow. I bet that you could all tell me what script is going to be. Script flow. Yeah, should be intuitive, hopefully. So if I run that, I'm going to run flow. Yeah, thank you. I was testing you. So you're going to get an error when you run this for the first time, and it says cannot find a flow config. So yeah, make that. So here's the thing. Abstracting away a flow configuration, really not easy to do. Not only are the tools set up to not make that work, but any built-in configuration we could provide for you, you'll definitely need to change it based off of the way your project works. And so we don't provide anything. In fact, all that we provide is the flow binary installed. So the only benefit you're getting by using PayPal scripts for flow over just regular flow is you don't have to list it in your dev dependency. That's pretty much it. Because all of the arguments you pass to flow or to PayPal scripts flow are just going to be forwarded onto the flow binary. So feel free to just use flow. The reason that it's included is to encourage you to actually use it, to just make it a little bit easier because it is something that we should all be doing at PayPal. So what we can do here is we can just say npm run flow init to initialize our project with flow. And now it will create this flow config for us. And from there, you just got to go look up the flow documentation. The nice thing about flow config is it's really simple. This is like nowhere near as complicated as a Webpack config or Babel config. For lots of smaller projects especially, this is all you're going to like. So no config. So now if we run npm run flow, you're going to get this thing that says the server is initializing. It takes a really long time. It's actually resolving across all of your dependencies and everything, making sure you're using things right, which is like mind-boggling to me. But sometimes it's going to come across stuff that's like totally messed up. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not a flow expert, and I don't understand why this is happening. So whenever this happens to me, I go to my flow config, and in my ignore, this actually happened to me just recently. Modules npm, there we go. That's what you need. So it's just a regex that matches the path to the module that's giving you trouble that you don't really actually care about. And then we can run this again. Oops. And it has to reinitialize the server because you changed your, the flow configuration. And no errors. Okay, great. The reason there are no errors is because we actually haven't opted into flow in our module yet. And so it's not even going to check anything. So that's fun. Hey, we're talking about flow, Jamin.
Oh, sorry, I was late. Get the special tag at the top?
Not yet. We're just about to do that. But actually, Jamin, can you explain why I need to do this?
Do you? Yeah, probably. So here's the thing about flow. Is setting it up is really annoying. So I don't know if Kent gave you a passionate plea to use type JavaScript, but let me do that quickly. Type JavaScript is fantastic. I would have talked about it earlier. But the reason why it helps us so much, because if you look at the types of errors we have in our node, the biggest problem that we have in node is crashes happen all over the place because we depend on expect a function to exist that doesn't exist, or expect a property to exist that doesn't exist. Types in our JavaScript properly, we can actually fairly easy statically detect at build time that something was wrong before it gets up. So we're able to prevent all these sorts of problems happening way earlier. At the very least, with something like Flow or TypeScript, we can it will tell us, hey, this might not exist. It doesn't know for sure when it's running if it will exist. It can say, hey, that property might not. It'll warn you that you need to add a check. So in my experience, Flow is tremendous. Wonderful, and you should totally check it out. Obviously, TypeScript, I consider them equally great, but Flow is a little bit easier to work with Babel and ESLint. For now, I think Babel 7 will change that, and then I'll have a fight about moving. But with regard to the configuration of Flow is a little bit nasty, and one of the things that it does is it will automatically read through all of your node modules. It's trying to detect that every single file in your by default, when you turn on Flow, it will read your files even if you don't have, like it'll try and predict your types even if you don't have them. So if you set a variable to a string, it'll say, oh, this is, it's pretty simple. So it'll go through your node modules. But the problem is, a lot of times we have sort of invalid JavaScript in our node modules, like a fixture file might have invalid JavaScript, or a JSON file might have comments. And Flow tries to read all those files, and so we oftentimes have to put a bunch of stuff in our ignore. Apparently this, for me, it was a bunch of stuff in the React folder.
Yep. Thank you. Yay. Yeah, so that's all we had to do. But in your source files, you have to enable Flow in every single file. So with TypeScript, you have to enable TypeScript by changing the file name to .ts. With Flow, you don't have to change the file name. You have to add a comment. Now, Flow is configurable so that you can say, I don't want the comment, just like check everything. It's generally not a good idea, to be honest. But in any case, all you have to do is add this comment at the top that says Flow. And then here, let's make a Flow error. So we're going to say this will default to a string A. And then just to be sure, we'll say sum of when. And now we'll run flow. And ta-da! We're going to say, oh, hey, A is missing an annotation, and B is missing an annotation, so I can't help you very much with those. Maybe somehow it's not able to determine what those things should be, because B, it looks like that's going to be a string, but A, like, that could be a string. Maybe we're concatenating, I don't know. So we're going to add some type of information. And I'm not going to give you like a one-on-one on flow. I don't have time for that. But we'll just say this is going to be a string. This is going to be or here, no, not strings, numbers. And then, sorry, what? Yeah. So this type is incompatible with the type you gave here, which you said was a number. And so we get this really nice handy thing. And so instead of concatenating our number 1 with the string hey, we're going to get a build time error that says, hey, I think you probably made a mistake. So you don't ship something to production that says 1 hey instead of like 112 or something. So, yeah. That's a good question. So prop types are nice for runtime validation of React components. And so they have that benefit of actually running at runtime. So after like data is loaded from the server and stuff, Flow doesn't run at runtime. And so yeah, there is a Babel plugin to like convert flow types to like runtime checks, which is actually could be useful in development. Maybe we'll include that in PayPal scripts eventually. But yeah, so there are trade-offs there. I think I'm myself moving over, like in my apps, I'm moving over to Flow over prop types, because the nice thing is you don't have to run the app to know that there's a problem. But then you're trading off like, well, what happens if the data is not matching the type that I created? So yeah, there are trade-offs there. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna switch. Yeah.
You file suit is public functions that are in this case, because we weren't
Oh.
It also, you know, we added over there. It says figure it out before that because you were adding numbers that probably close a lot of has a lot of sometimes I can
Yep. All right, cool. I think that was pretty much it for Flow. Like I said, the built-in configuration for Flow is non-existent. There is no built-in configuration for Flow. It's very thin wrapper on top of Flow itself. So great. So I think that was it for Flow. Now let's get into testing. Yay, testing. Okay, so who wants to hazard a guess what the test script is going to be called? Yeah. Ta-da! And if I run npmt, which is a nice handy shortcut, thank you npm, it's going to enter watch mode by default. And how many people here have used Jest before? Okay, so I'm just going to pretend that I made this watch mode for all of you other people. And look at this amazing thing I made. Just kidding. So Jest, by default, when you run the test script, it's going to enter watch mode. The only exceptions to that are if it's running in CI, then it will not run in watch mode. It'll just run all the tests. Or if you add a --no--watch, then it will not run watch mode. Or if you add a coverage flag, then it will run coverage but not watch mode. Or update snapshot for those of you who are familiar with snapshots. But in all other cases, it's going to start in watch mode. Watch mode is super amazing in Jest. It's one of Jest's best features. And one of the cool things about it is that it's only going to run tests that are relevant to the files that you've changed since your last Git commit. So the way that I'm going to show that feature off is I'm going to go ahead and add, one other thing. You do not want to commit the dist directory. I should have mentioned this earlier, but you want to ignore that. So in your git ignore, add a dist, because the dist directory generated files generally do not want to commit. Okay, so now if I add all these things and commit these with initial commit, then they're all in. And now if I run npm t, I'm going to get this popped up again. Now, I don't actually have any tests yet. And so, of course, there aren't any files changed since last commit because there aren't any tests. So I can actually press A to run all the tests and see what happens. I'm going to get no tests found. So let's go ahead and create a test. So the built-in configuration has the convention that all test files will be found in a directory called __tests__. And then any JS file found inside of that directory is going to be considered a test. So I'll make an index.js file in here. And now it's going to run that because we're running all the tests. If I and it's going to fail because I'm not doing any tests. So actually, let's add a test really quick. So we'll say test works. We'll expect true to be true, and that test is working. Okay, cool. So now if I press W to show more of the watch usage, and I can have it run only the failed tests, which I think is so cool. Only the tests related to changed files. I can do a file name or even a test name regex pattern. It's pretty cool. Just run those. So I'm just going to switch to O, and that's going to run my index because that's a file that's changed since the last git commit. It's a file that was added. And I could press F, and there were no failed tests. I could change that by saying false. And then we'll run only the changed files. Whoop, W. Oh, looks like that is an experimental feature. That was actually the first time I'd ever seen that. Okay, so now if I run F, then it's going to run the broken ones, and I fix it, and it's fixed. Hooray! So yeah, a lot of really cool features, and yeah. On CI? Yeah, so on CI, PayPal scripts detect CI, and if it's on CI, then it doesn't. So like in previous projects that I've had, we'd have a test script that would run like not watch mode, and then a test :watch script that would run the script in watch mode. Now you don't need to do that because PayPal scripts it for you. Yay! So that's great. I think that let me think. So there are a whole, like, Jest is a huge subject in itself. Like I could give a 2-day. In fact, I am giving a 2-day workshop on Jest later, a couple times this year. Not just Jest, but testing in general. Oh, fun fact. This is Jest. This is Jest logo. Got a shirt. Yeah, Jest is a big subject. I'm not going to go into that, but you can learn about that. If you go to Jest here, it'll show you the logo. You can.
So, Kent, when he first started, Ava, pretty.
It's true. It was bad.
Actually worked so well for us, and so we were very. No. I know what we really need. We need to Jest. I don't remember what happened when we went to Ava. And to be honest, it was a little bit of like but we decided to go for it. So like
not always, apparently,
well,
but yeah.
But learning from. So I said, no, I've got you back. We moved to Jest. Seriously. 2 minutes, and now like we used to just. And now because automatically figures out what the test really for the most part, it's like no code. So, yes. Good work.
Yeah, thank
The
you.
first one.
Yeah, it was. It was not good. So yeah, the built-in configuration of Jest is actually really, really smart. It does a lot of really cool things for you. I'm not going to demo all of those for you. But there's a built-in setup test framework script file. And if you've ever configured Jest, you probably had to make these. And this does like a whole bunch of useful things for you. For example, if you're like in the server directory, like in your server of your project, and you depend on Cal for your logging, which you probably do, I spent like 3 days finding a memory leak in our tests because of Cal. And like during our test, Cal was trying to connect to a remote server to send logs during tests, and this was like a crazy memory leak. And it made our test super slow. So after 3 days, I figured that out, and I figured out how to configure or make Cal not do that. And that's built into PayPal scripts, so you don't have to worry about that. And this is why PayPal scripts is PayPal scripts and not like scripts for every project in the world, because it has like very PayPal specific useful things in here. It also will automatically configure Enzyme for you. If you have the right dependencies installed, it'll configure those things for you. It has mocks for local storage and session storage and stuff. Some helpful things for Glamour and Glamorous if you include certain things. If you're using React Content Loader on the back end and then PP React L10N on the front end for your international or your localization stuff, then the built-in configuration will actually automatically cache all of the English locales for you and have those all ready and set up for you in your tests. So when you're running your test, you'll see the actual content and not just like the keys or whatever, which is like really, really awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there, are you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wonder if maybe there is something we could do. Let me add this to the ideas.
Because I've been working on.
Yeah. Yeah, so I spent like.
Not so. I remember, but it's not. I figured out a way to like set up score without figure it, and then it'll actually your like I import a controller.
But you don't want it.
Yeah, that's a discussion for another time. So I spent a couple weeks in P2P Node Web working with this problem, and Service Core is a tough beast. Huh? Yeah. So there's a pretty good solution for mocking Service Core stuff. Pretty good in P2P Node Web, and maybe there's something that we could do within PayPal scripts to make that process easier, or we could like maybe make a module that you can import to make that process easier. Yeah, so for one of the really nice things about Jest is that its mocking capabilities are like unmatched, so good. And so yeah, using like regular like Jest features, you can accomplish that. That's what P2P Node Web is. We can talk about the actually hitting MS Master during tests later if you want. Yeah, so anyway, the built-in configuration does a lot of really cool stuff for Jest. You can take a look at that. And then you can extend that built-in configuration as well, just like I showed with the roll-up stuff. Okay, cool. So that's testing. Any questions? Okay, great. So next I wanted to talk about is the validate script. So every project should have a validate script. I'm convinced of this. This is a really useful, useful type of script. So we're going to say validate is PayPal scripts validate. And what this is going to do, I run validate, So this is going to run a bunch of scripts all at the same time. It runs flow and my tests, not in watch mode, in coverage mode, and my build, and my linting all at the same time. So the reason why I think this is super duper valuable is because of this next script I'm going to show you. It's called setup. And this is a script that you run as soon as you've cloned the repository. You do nothing else until after you've run the script. And it is npm run install and npm run validate. So you'll notice that it's not a PayPal script. The reason is because you're supposed to run this after you've cloned the repository. You don't have your dependencies yet. So it installs the dependencies and then runs the validate script. The reason why this is so useful is because when somebody new joins your team or they're going to contribute to your project, the first thing they're going to want to do is set up the repo and make sure that things work. And so what you can do is you say, okay, so you have 3 lines of setup. Git clone, cd into the directory, npm run setup. And then from there, they know that like if things fail, then they know that their changes aren't what caused the problem, but that there is actually a problem in like developer master of the repository. So every project should have a setup and a validate script. The validate script is really useful. It runs these scripts. It actually does a couple of other things. It integrates with the pre-commit script that we'll talk about in a little bit. One other thing, so it's going to run, sorry, let me like slow down and back up. The way that it works is it is going to look for the scripts that you have in your package.json. And if you have a build, it's going to run that one. If you have a lint, it's going to run that. If you have a flow, it's going to run that. And if you have a test, it's going to run that. Okay, and it's not going to, like if I remove this, then it's not going to run the lint, right? So it's all based off of what you have. The nice thing about that is if you don't like the lint script for some reason, then you can use ESLint directly, and it's still going to run that script. So the validate script is going to take advantage of whatever you're doing. It's just there to help you run some scripts that you have defined. If you want to have it run other scripts, like say you have a flow client or something, I don't know why you'd ever do something like this, but like if you had another script that you wanted it to run in addition to everything else, then you can specify your own scripts that you want it to run in parallel. So you'd say build, comma, lint, comma, flow, client, whatever, and test. Whatever, you just comma separated list of npm scripts you want it to run, and it'll spin them all off in parallel. Okay. Most of the time, you won't need that little feature, but that's kind of handy. Any questions about that? Yeah.
Validate post. Like, I'm like.
Right. So here's the problem with post install. It's probably okay in apps. Apps like that'd be fine. The problem in apps is when you go to deploy it to Jenkins, or like when you run it to build in Jenkins, it's going to run your install. And because of the way the NodeOps scripts work, it'll run your post install because that's part of NPM. And then the NodeOps scripts are going to run your test and your build and your linting and everything too. So you're going to run it twice. So that's not fun. On the other side, if you're like publishing an NPM module into our internal registry, when I go to install your module, I'm going to be running your post install script. And that's not useful either because your post install script depends on your dev dependencies, which I did not install, and so now I have a broken npm install. So post install scripts are, in my, they have a very specific use case. For example, the Husky, the dependency we have for Git hooks, it has a post install script, so it installs your Git hook. And so that's really useful. But yeah, I wouldn't have a post install script for something. And to touch on the fact that it's like it's like uncommon. the setup script. Anybody who's going to be contributing to your project, like what they probably will be doing and should be doing is looking at your README and seeing like, how do I set this up? And if you just say, here's the setup, clone, cd, npm run setup, then most of the time. If they're not following your contributing guidelines, then they're probably going to have a lot of missteps anyway. So, okay, cool. Any other questions? Okay, so there's one other really neat thing about the validate script, and that is its functionality with a test:(e to e) script. So if you have a test:(e to e), for now we'll just say echo testing. So this is for like your functional testing, whatever. Then it's also going to run that, but it's going to change the way that it runs some things. So it's going to run flow like normal. It's going to run your tests, but then it's going to run your build and your test:(e to e). Because generally it's a good idea to run your end-to-end tests across or on your generated, like your built files rather than your source files, just to make sure you don't have like a minification problem or something like that. And so if you have a test:(e to e), then it's going to run the build and then the test and not run those in parallel. So yeah, there's currently no PayPal scripts test:(e to e). Eventually maybe there will be, but yeah, currently not. So you'd use any tool, whatever you want in that script. But there's support for that because that's a pretty common use case. Okay. Any other or any questions on that? Okay, so this next script is actually not one that I would normally put in my package.json. It's the format script. And the reason that I won't put it in my package.json is because the pre-commit script. Trying to think if I should even talk about it until let me switch the order here. We're going to talk about pre-commit, and then we'll talk about format and remark. So yeah, like I said, Husky installs some Git hooks for you. At the time that I ran the install, I didn't have my Git directory set up, so I'm going to run that setup for Husky install. There we go. Cool. Let me just make sure I got those installed hooks. Nope. Let's see, what do they do? Drat. I really just don't want to do this. Here, let's see what they're. So they have. Oh, install. Yeah, bin install. There we go. Bin install. There we go. Okay, cool. Now I got all those installed. So normally you wouldn't have to worry about that. Just make sure you have your Git repo set up first. But I have all these nice commit or Git hooks in my Git directory. Oh shoot, I just lost my editor. And so now I can take advantage of those things. Got that little quick diversion. So this one is simply called pre-commit, and PayPal scripts pre-commit. And that's all that you need. So what this one does is actually many things. It uses a tool, so it uses the tool Husky to install the commit hooks and to run those, run your pre-commit script. So Husky's going to be responsible for running the script. And then under the hood, the pre-commit script is going to be using a tool called lint staged. How many people have heard of lint staged before? Okay, so what lint staged does is it takes a configuration file that's built into PayPal scripts, and inside of that configuration file it says any files that match .js or any files that match like .json. I want to run these scripts against those files before the commit actually happens. And it's only matching those against the ones that you're about to commit. So let's just do a little quick demo, kind of help solidify this idea. So here I have this index.js. I have this sum I'm going to make a change to, and I'm just going to like format it in a terrible way. We'll just add a bunch of spaces all over the place that makes people cry. But the code still works, right? So nobody would want to work in a code base like that. Or what's even worse is a tab character. I don't even know how to like make a tab character, but like mixed spaces and tabs, like, so annoying. And so what the pre-commit hook is going to do is I'm going to say I'm going to commit all my stuff. Or here, actually, let's add. Oh, sorry, we need to ignore the coverage directory, which I totally glossed over, but just coverage. It's great. It's amazing. But we'll add that. And now we'll add all the things. And I'm going to keep this file open while we run our commit. So git commit, all the things, commit. Now, I'm going to run this, and it's going to happen fast. And so you want to watch. Ready, go. Okay, it's not. So it's running the tasks for the JavaScript. Oh, snap. It's all formatted for us. Yeah. So amazing, right? Yeah, so a bunch of stuff happened with that pre-commit script. Remember, all I ran was git commit. I didn't have to run the script. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so here are the things that happened when I ran this commit. So there are some tasks that are configured for LintStage to run if it comes across a file that matches each of these patterns. And when there's a file that's about to be committed, it's going to run across each one of these files. So it found a couple that matched the JS, and you missed it because it's like it hides it, which is kind of annoying to me. But it runs a couple of things. First, it formats it. Then it runs it against linting to make sure that it doesn't have any like variables that aren't defined or something. And then it runs tests against just that file. So any tests that use that file will be run as part of the pre-commit hook. And that's one of the things that's like super duper nice about this, because as the P2P Node Web app grew in number of tests, the pre-commit hook just got like unbearable. And so everybody would -- no verify because it took so long to commit anything because we're running all the tests every time. And so now this is all built into PayPal scripts. It just runs the tests that are relevant to the files that are being. That's really handy. And then at the end, if it gets through formatting, linting, and testing, then it's going to re-add that file. So because it's reformatted it, it's changed since the last time. So it's going to do a git add of that file again so that the formatted version is what's about to be committed. So you don't ever have to worry about formatting ever. It just happens. And like you don't have to configure your editor to do anything special. You just like code up with tabs, spaces, who cares, semicolons. And by the time your code gets to GitHub in a PR, it looks lovely, and people are only complimenting you on how great your code logic is, and they're not getting angry about you with tabs and spaces and semicolons.
We had, don't take a person. Usually I have style and really take care of it. They're really like, I was so impressed. And then I was like, oh, they're prettier. Of course it feels so familiar. But you know, it's great. It's that something that was like.
We got Trevor and Brian.
Okay, hold on. We got initially, I think people may have been, oh, but why? What about your own?
Yeah. So don't care about formatting anymore. It doesn't matter. Prettier will just do it for you. So that said, Prettier is configurable, and so you can configure the Prettier config. Oh, sorry, I don't think we ever mentioned this, but the tool that's formatting our code is called Prettier, and it's amazing. It can take any ugly code and make it pretty, make it prettier. But that tool is configurable. So if you really just really want your semicolons, I don't know what to tell you, but you can format, you can change that with prettier. It is the default. I'm the weirdo. Yeah, but you can change that. You just add a prettier config. You extend the config. You can look at that in the docs. It works exactly like the way that the rollup thing worked. You could extend it. It's a really small config, so you could just like inline it in your package.json too. So yeah, so there are a couple other things happening here. So it will actually also format your markdown files. So those look nice, which is pretty awesome. It'll format your JSON files, so no more tabs and spaces in the JSON files either. Less in CSS too. And then if you're doing documentation, like using the doc script, which I don't think I'll have time to demo, but this will actually automatically detect that you've changed your docs and run the doc generation thing to generate the doc site, which is what PayPal scripts like this. This is the doc site. This is what your docs would look like, which I think looks kind of nice. Yeah, I'll just write the docs. Yeah, on pre-commit. I'll read your code. That's why it takes so long. Just kidding. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the pre-commit scripts. Pretty handy. Sometimes it can be useful to just take your project and just format everything, like when you're first starting or at random other times when like maybe somebody's been doing no verify and you're like, hey dude, like stop skipping the commit hooks. But if you want to, then you can run node modules bin PayPal scripts format. And you can format a specific file, so I could say format the README, or you could just leave that blank and it'll just format all the files in your project. It won't format like node modules and stuff, or like coverage or whatever, but yeah, it'll just format all the files. So if you have a big project, it'll just go. It's amazing. It's so cool. There's also this remark script, which is kind of handy. I'll just show you really quick. It's similar to the format script because it does actually format your markdown files, but it also has this handy table of contents functionality. So if you add a table of contents in any markdown file, and then you run remark, it's going to update that file under the table of contents with the table of contents for that markdown. So if you want a table of contents, just add table of contents, and then it'll take the rest of the file and make it contents for you. You don't need to run it. It runs on commit. But because we'd already committed this and we hadn't, we didn't run it with the pre-commit scripts, you can run it manually. So yeah, you don't have to run that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for those 3 scripts. Cool. Any questions before we move on? We got like 20 minutes left.
Does all of the scripts also
so no, not all the scripts. So like, if you run PayPal scripts lint, it's going to run across everything. But during the pre-commit hook phase, it's going to just run across the files that are being changed. So it's as fast as. I feel like there was something else I wanted to mention about that. Yeah. So we're not gonna get to the docs. That one's cool. The release script is good for modules that will like have an interactive prompt like what kind of version bump do you want, whatever. Here are the commits since the last release. So real quick.
There was some maybe really I think toolkit
What if you, I'm guessing you're using Webpack
For the app side.
modify it?
Mhm.
Yeah. What if you want to, can you make it an option there or that from without?
So like modify the Webpack config or okay, yeah. So if you want to use a different tool from Webpack, then you just have to change your script, like not use the build script. If you want to modify the existing config, then it's just like if you wanted to modify Babel or ESLint or Webpack or Rollup or whatever. You just create a webpack.config.js, and from there on out, PayPal scripts is like, I'm going to use your config. If you want to just modify, then you do the same thing, and you here I'll just show you really quick. So this isn't an app, and so this won't make any difference. But you just make it webpack.config.js. And you just want to modify something. You'll say const, you could call it base config, and it'll be PayPal scripts / webpack. And then your module exports your base config, and then make your modifications here.
Cool. How are we all supposed to say this?
Oh,
Right? Not
no.
having to deal with
So
Webpack,
if there's anything that I've
all
learned
these
about
things.
product folks, it's that they're like water in which they will fill the container in which they're given. And so they'll see you being so productive and they'll be like, oh, snap, we can do so much more with the productivity that we have now. So no, I wouldn't be worried about your job.
I think his question was more, well, hey, this isn't working here. We're not gonna
oh, change jobs. Like go to a
Yeah,
different
yeah,
company.
yeah.
Um,
Like, what, how do you?
Hold
I just
on,
see
this
the
is
same
the same principle that you have.
Yeah.
A lot of the new tools you do is people realize that the community as the worst thing in the world to and so a lot of these tools, don't worry about it. Tools in the we're leading the start. But either way, I think are going to stick with you following.
Yeah, so I've been blogging about what I've been doing a lot, and so lots of people are telling me that, oh yeah, I started doing that at my company, and it's been amazing. So yeah, this is a like really really valuable thing that you could do at any company you go to.
So, sorry,
No, that's fine.
Say I'm going to start a new app. What is left?
Yeah, it's a great question. So
And I are starting Monday. We've already.
yeah, so the biggest challenge right now, and let me just do. Yeah, so maybe we can talk about Storybook like really briefly at the end, but I'll jump into the apps right now. So the PayPal scripts determines whether you're an app or a module based on the directory structure. It's pretty much like if your project has a client package.json and a server package.json, then it's an app. That's pretty much the only criteria. Except, yeah. So where the format is, your tooling dependencies go in the root package.json, which should normally just be PayPal scripts. Could be some other stuff that you want in addition. Your client dependencies go into the package.json in the client directory. That could be like React and Glamorous and things are your dependencies. And then you have like Enzyme and other like testing dependencies as your dev dependencies there. And then package.json for the server is the server production and dev dependencies. So the problem is that our tools at PayPal are very reliant on our server package.json being the root package.json. Like Topos and like a million other things depend on that. So I have been working, and Jamin has been working for the last couple of weeks to update some of our tools so that the server directory can be configurable. And like I am 99% sure that I actually had a successful deploy last night with this structure. But I'm 100% sure that I've had a successful deploy several times with a modified structure. So the modifications, and this is what I'd recommend if you need to deploy something really soon. Instead of having a server directory, you just put all of your you basically merge the server package.json and the root one, and you move your like pretty much all these files go in here. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So you'll still have a server source, but your locales, your config, if you have views, then all of those will need to go in the root. And so the nice thing is that like that will definitely deploy. It works. We actually haven't gone to production, but we have it on staging. So hopefully that's a good sign. But the nice thing is when we do get this structure working, making the change should be pretty trivial. You just move those and then update a couple paths. Maybe we'll have a script to do it for you. So, but yeah, if you need something to be deployed in the next week or two, probably go with the thing that actually deploys right now. If you've got like a month, then you could probably stick with this because we're like really cool. Yeah, so there's not a whole lot left there.
Do you have
Yeah, good question. Yes. So you could change the config, but tried to make that decision for you so you don't have to waste your brain power on. So yeah, but other than that, like the application and module, pretty much the same. So like the directory structure, like from the source on down will be the same. You have your test directory, your package.json, like that. So Jest is, or lots of these tools have smart configuration where they will determine what configuration options to enable and what values to have based off of what your dependencies are. For example, if you have a dependency on React, then it will configure Jest to be in have the test environment of JS DOM. If you don't, then it would be Node. Stuff like that. So yeah, all of this stuff works pretty much exactly the same. Honestly, what's happening under the hood is that when like for the build script, for example, when you run the build script from your Node Web app here, it's going to actually run the build script simultaneously for client and server. And for the server, that's just like the regular Node module build scripts. It's like exactly the same thing. Using the same code path. For the client, because it's using Webpack, it's a little bit different. But it just spawns those both in those directories, and everything else is pretty much the same. Yeah. So, oh, you mean this project that we're like coding up together?
Yeah, just a sample.
Yeah. Well, so there actually is a sample app, a sample browser module, and a sample node module that you can go check out. And the sample app is using the ultimate directory structure that we're eventually going to come down to. So yeah, hopefully that is instructive for each one. My plan is eventually to make these sample apps have a script called like eject or fork, and then you clone this, you run npm run fork, and it'll like clear up your Git history and like set up everything so that it can be whatever you want to call it. Updates all the names of everything. Yeah, this is Kraken. So you go to the server, and everything inside of the server directory should resemble what your apps are. So
when you're developing, you have
mm-hmm.
consider folder.
Yeah, so there are a couple ways you could do that, but that would probably be the best way. So here, let me, yeah, that's a good question. Let me, I'll CD to the sample app, just so we have something that is already set up all nicely. Maybe I can just demo a couple of the we've got. So yeah, as was mentioned, we do have these 3 package.json files. So if you wanted to, for example, you want to add a new dependency in here, you want to add downshift or something, then you have 2 ways that you could do that. you could cd into the client directory. That would probably be the easiest, and then npm install as a dev dependency downshift, or actually this would be a regular dependency downshift. So that would probably be the way I'd do it. You could also do this handy thing, npm, and let's see, I think it's called, I'm not even going to show you, I can't remember. It's like proxy or something, but yeah. Into both. Into both.
Let me give you
Yeah.
the pitch on this. So one of the issues that we're having. We always put our forget. Has there are could be like a daily usage. All those services, and then when you go to build your packaging really
There you go.
it's worth it. I'm happy to hear but we talked about it all. I really think
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with. It's still one. You, imagine you start.
it's
Well,
not
but
really
they're
a
running in
big
different
problem.
environments, and so you don't need to like so the
patch.
yeah that's fair. So there's one issue on the PayPal scripts repo right now for a shared directory, where like you have universal code that you want to run on the client and the server, then you could put it in the shared directory. So you could do something like that, put it in a shared directory. But yeah, does that kind of help answer? Yeah.
What's this storybook?
Yeah, so let's look at the storybook thing really quick. So this is, I have an app. So I'll go ahead and just run npm run storybook. And this will run the PayPal script storybook. This is running a Webpack build, which resembles the built-in configuration really closely. But it's going to say storybook started on here. Storybook is an app. So this is where you would very quickly iterate on woohoo, snake. This is actually in the sample app. When you pull up the sample app, it'll have. So I thought that'd be fun. But Storybook is where you would develop like isolated shared components, or not even shared, but just like components in like really quickly. So it has like hot module replacement, and it has like all these really nice things so that you can just develop this thing in isolation. You pass this components and props stuff. It's really React specific. So if you're not using React, then start using React, and then you can use this. Yeah, that's basically what Storybook is. It's built into PayPal scripts. There's a whole bunch of really nice things that PayPal scripts does just automatically for you, so you don't have to configure anything. And so the way that it works, or the way that you use it, is on your client side, you have to install Storybook React. And then once you've done that, then you are able to use the Storybook script. And the way that you the way that you do that is anywhere inside your source directory, it's going to look for a stories directory. I put it inside the test directory just because I kind of see it as sort of a test, but you don't have to put it there. You can put it anywhere. But any __ stories __, those will be loaded into Storybook, into the Storybook app. And then from there, you can import Storybook React. You use the Storybook APIs to create these things called stories. And then here you can render your header, and you can pass your props. And so you're in the middle. You're like working on this reusable component, whatever. You just pass it some props, and then you can really develop it very, very quickly without having to like navigate around the UI every time you make a change. Render your thing the way that you want. And if it depends on React Router, then you just like import the router and have a fake router and stuff. Like it's really, really nice. One thing that I've noticed as I was Redux, yeah. So you could import your store into here and use that too. So you just render it like you would. So one thing that I found as I was developing this is that often these stories resemble what I'd be rendering in my tests. So like I want to render the header, but I also want to render the header with the name prop, and I want to like write some assertions based on that. And so another thing that PayPal scripts kind of allows for you to do is to have an examples directory, and here you'd have like header.js, and then here we could take these. We'll get rid of that, and then we could export default or export I don't know, const default thing equals that, and then export like thing with PayPal, export const with PayPal. And then you could import those this into your tests and in your storybook, and then use it in both places. So you could like develop the way that you want your components to be used in the examples folder, and then actually develop the component in Storybook. And then when you're happy with that, then you develop some tests around those same examples. So anyway, I think that this will be a surprising boost to developer productivity at PayPal, because like this is one of the tools that falls off when we have to go and ship stuff. It's like we get our Webpack config working. I don't have time to set up Storybook, so I'm just going to go ship stuff. Turns out that if you'd spent a little bit of time getting Storybook ready, you would have been able to develop and ship your stuff faster in the first place. But now you don't have to worry about making that decision, like will it be faster or not. It doesn't take any time at all. You just add this stories directory and start developing it. So. Yeah, so that's another really handy thing about the PayPal or Storybook in general is it has this concept of add-ons. So there's a whole community around Storybook that developed these add-ons. One of them is this accessibility one, and PayPal Scripts doesn't come built in with any of these add-ons. It could eventually maybe come built in, but each one of these add-ons needs to be configured as part of your Storybook. You have to like add it explicitly. And that's super annoying, and PayPal Scripts is all about not configuring anything. So all you have to do is install an add-on, and PayPal Scripts will add it automatically. So you just put it into your package.json. We have the Storybook add-on accessibility. Yeah, so that is Storybook. There's not a whole lot to talk about as far as apps and the server. One thing that I've seen so far with people like who are, and it's time to go, but people starting to use PayPal Scripts with apps is it can be difficult to distinguish at what point PayPal Scripts ends and my app starts. But yeah, pretty much like PayPal Scripts doesn't care what's in here. Just think about, like, consider it that way. It just cares that there's a package.json. It does do some like little optimizations, like if you have React content loader, it'll do some like optimizations and things there. But as far as like your app getting deployed or your app getting you know, like run in production or what happens in production, that is entirely up to how your app works and how it runs. So you'll have this index.js file here. This is one thing that's kind of important with your app. So in development mode, oh, I didn't even show you the development script. Sorry, let me back up really quick and show you the development script really quick. And now Jamin's gone. He's going to miss this. I made this part for him. Well, it's his loss. Okay, so if you run, and so this is like add a dev script. Here, let's do. So we're in the root directory of our project. I added a script called dev. It's PayPal scripts dev. Then you can run npm run dev. And it's going to fire up a server and a client server. So this is actually one piece that I'm hoping to improve. But right now, the way that this works is, like probably in your apps, if you're using Webpack, you're using the Webpack middleware that like can hook up your backend and your client so that your backend can serve the client files and stuff. So the problem with that is every single time you need to make a change to your server and reboot your server, you have to wait for Webpack to finish, and that's super annoying. And so this, you don't have to do that. Like Webpack and the server are totally different servers. But because of that, you have to, and because of the way CORS works and everything, you have to proxy your requests, any requests for like your request URI/JS, like any request for the JS stuff, you have to proxy that to the Webpack. So that's like kind of annoying. I don't like that. We'll figure out a better solution for that. But now the server and the client are actually going to be reloaded anytime you make a change. So I like add a line here, stuff, and I hit save, and my server is going to restart automatically. On top of that, it also starts up the inspector, a debugger. So you can open up your browser. Here, actually, if we look at the DevTools and click on this handy little icon, it's pretty cool. Then that's going to open up the inspector, and I can put breakpoints in here, and then I can go to hit my app, and boom. And I can start stepping through my actual code. This is like what Jameis was showing, except this is locally. Then I can look at, oh, is logged in as false. That's why it's redirecting me. Oh, interesting. Whatever. I can figure out what the quest thing is. So that's kind of nice. No more need to console.log all over the place. So yeah, that's all built in. You don't need to really configure anything for that part. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll have to do all that work first. Another kind of unfortunate thing that made me think of something that we're going to work on and hopefully make better is because we are because we want to support Flow on the server, we have to have Babel because like you can't actually run your source files if they have flow type. Okay, so when you run Babel, it's going to move all your files into the dist directory, and that means that your config.json might be kind of messed up. So here we have path. We got locals. Here we go. So for like express and routing, for example, async. For your config.json, that needs to point to dist, but for your development JSON, that needs to point to source. So you're going to have duplicate configuration for this, which is like super annoying. I get it. We're going to work on something, and if you have ideas on how we could improve that, those ideas would be welcome. Yeah, so there will be a couple of places where you'll have to duplicate stuff to deal with the source and dist stuff. But for the most part, this should resemble like your existing apps pretty well. And then this is the other thing that just like totally really is annoying. We'll figure out a better integration strategy there too. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, so we could abstract this away so people don't have to do this in their own apps. But I don't even like the way that it's done. I'd like to find another way because the whole proxy idea. I don't know, maybe it's not all that bad. But yeah, if we do stick with the proxy idea, we will make a module, so you just install it, and you don't have to worry about it. Yeah, it like in general, the fact that like lots of applications these days are like the server is only an API. It doesn't render anything. At PayPal, that's not really a thing that we do. I don't know how easy it would be to develop an app like that at PayPal, and there are trade-offs around that too. But if you can do things that way, then your life will be like majorly simplified, and you can do that with PayPal scripts too. You can make that work. Yeah. So anyway, we're working on that little piece of. But hopefully the sample app can give you a good idea. Oh, and I didn't even show you. We can log in here. This is if you get the sample app set up on your machine and it's working, then it should look like this, and you can play the snake game. I didn't write this. I got it from a CodePen. But okay, I think that's more than the time that I had. Does anybody have any other questions for me or feedback or ideas? Okay. Cool. Thank you. Yeah.